My name is Sarah. I'm 33, and I have spent the last 9 years as a licensed wedding coordinator in Asheville, North Carolina. I have managed 214 weddings. I know what a venue contract looks like at 2 in the morning. I know which deposits are refundable, which are not, and exactly which language in a booking agreement makes a contract legally challengeable by someone who never signed it. So when my mother called on a Sunday afternoon to share exciting news about a surprise she and my father had arranged for my wedding, I asked one question before she finished her sentence. Whose name is on the contract? She paused. Then she said mine. I asked her to send me the agreement. She said I was being ungrateful. I said, send me the agreement, Mom. She sent it. I read it in 4 minutes. Then I found the clause I was looking for, on page 3, paragraph 7, and I picked up the phone. Not to call my mother back. To call Whitfield Estate's events director. My family thought the deposit was non-refundable, and the venue was booked, and the only thing left was for me to accept a wedding I hadn't planned, on a date I hadn't chosen, at a location I'd never seen, so that my brother's charity gala happening the same weekend at the same estate could fill its donor tables with my 200 wedding guests. They hadn't counted on paragraph 7. And they had not counted on what 9 years of reading venue contracts does to a person's ability to find the exit in any room. Welcome to the Family Ledger, where we talk honestly about money, family, and the moments when both arrive at the same table uninvited. If you've ever had someone make a decision in your name and call it a gift, this story is for you. Subscribe, drop a comment, and let me start at the beginning. I want to tell you what I do before I tell you what my family did, because the two things are completely connected. I became a wedding coordinator because I love the logistics of it, not the romance, although the romance is real and I've cried at more ceremonies than I'll admit publicly. The logistics. The layer beneath the visible even where everything either holds or falls apart. The vendor sequencing, the contract language, and the contingency plans that guests never knew existed because they worked. I love knowing that a perfectly smoky evening is not an accident. It is a document, a timeline, and 100 small decisions made weeks before anyone puts on a dress. By the time my mother called that Sunday, I had coordinated weddings at 47 different venues across 4 states. I knew Whitfield Estate by reputation. A restored antebellum property 40 minutes outside the city. Beautiful grounds, a grand hall with original millwork, and a terrace that photographed well in any light. I had referred 3 candidates there over the years. I knew their standard contract by heart. I was also engaged. Had been for 8 months to a man named Daniel, a civil engineer who proposed I kitchen of Since her apartment on a Tuesday morning while I was making coffee. Because Daniel is the kind of person who understands that the moments that matter don't need a stage. We had been planning our wedding for 6 of those 8 months. Small and intentional. 60 guests. A vineyard in the Blue Ridge called Larkspur Hill, which I had visited once for a site tour and immediately knew was the right place. Exposed beam ceiling in the tasting room. A gnave that faced west. The kind of quiet that settles over a mountain at dusk that makes everything said in it feel permanent. We had sent save the dates. We had a date. We had a venue we loved. None of that was information my family had asked about. Not because I hadn't shared it. Because they hadn't asked. My family is a specific kind of complicated. The kind where love is real but conditional in ways nobody ever names directly. My parents, Patricia and Jean, are good people in the broadest sense. They show up. They remember birthdays. They mean well in the way that people mean well when they have always believed that their instincts about what's best for the people they love are more reliable than the actual preferences of those people. My mother is a planner in the civilian sense. She plans gatherings, manages logistics for her church auxiliary, and organizes the neighborhood association's annual picnic with the particular intensity of someone who was born to run a small country and ended up running a suburb. She is warm and capable and completely convinced that her version of any event is the correct version. Other versions are drafts. My father, Gene, is quieter, more comfortable in the background, but he enables in the way quiet people enable. He agrees. He nods. He says your mother's right. The way you say it, whoa, when you mean this will be easier for everyone if I say your mother's it. My brother Marcus is 29. He is the younger one. He is also, and I say this with the particular clarity of someone who has spent a lifetime watching it operate, my mother's favorite. Not in a cruel way. In the way that parents sometimes have a child who fits their vision of what a child should be more precisely than the other one does. And the alignment creates a warmth that the other child can see but never quite access. Marcus ran a nonprofit. The Bright Page Foundation is dedicated to children's literacy in underserved communities. He had started it at 26, which my mother described to everyone as remarkable and inspiring, and it was genuinely. Marcus was good at it. He cared about the work. He also cared about the profile the work gave him, about the donor dinners, the annual gala, the photographs of Marcus at a podium in a good suit accepting a plaque from someone notable. Both things were true simultaneously, and I had made peace with both. The annual Bright Page Gala was Marcus's biggest fundraising event. Each Octo rented a venue, filled it with donors, delivered a speech, and raised somewhere between $40,000 and $70,000 for the foundation. It was real money doing real good. It was also, every year, a significant production that the whole family contributed to in various ways. Mom handled RSVPs. Dad set up chairs. I, in the years before the silence, helped with vendor coordination. 3 years before my engagement, the family went through what I'll call a financial compression. Dad's business had a slow stretch. Marcus's nonprofit salary was modest, and the gala was running at a higher cost than the fundraising was covering. There were quiet conversations about the foundation's sustainability and louder conversations about expenses I was, in the way I had always been occasionally asked to contribute to. I had been the one with a salary, the one without dependents, the one who managed money carefully enough to have reserves, which meant I was the one who received calls framed as conversations and checks framed as loans, and the whole architecture of being needed that I had been living inside since I was old enough to have a checking account. I want to be clear that I did not resent helping. I resented the assumption that I would. There is a difference, and it lives in the body differently. By the time Daniel proposed, I had already started quietly rebuilding the boundary between what I owed my family emotionally and what I owed them financially. I was in a good place with it. Therapy had helped. Distance had helped. And my own wedding, the thing I had spent 9 years helping other people build exactly right, was going to be built exactly right for us, for Daniel and me, the way we wanted it. That was the plan on the Sunday my mother called. The call came at 2:15 in the afternoon. Patricia's name on the screen, which usually meant either a logistical question or news of something I hadn't been told was happening. It was both. "Sweetheart," she said before I could say much of anything. "We have the most wonderful surprise for you and Daniel. Your father and I have been working on this for weeks." I felt the thing in my chest, the low specific unease I had learned to take seriously. I kept my voice neutral. "What is it, Mom?" "We booked Whitfield Estate for your wedding. The grand hall, the full package, catering coordination, and the terrace for the reception." She paused for effect. "October 14th is perfect." October 14th. My wedding was planned for October 7th. At Larkspur Hill. 60 guests. We had sent the save the dates. "Mom," I said carefully, "we already have a venue." She waved that off through the phone somehow. I could hear the wave. "Larkspur Hill is too small, sweetheart. You have family. You have Daniel's family. The Whitfield can hold 200 people, and it's stunning. We saw it at Marcus's gala last year, and we thought it would be perfect." Marcus's gala. Something clicked behind my eyes. Quiet. Fast. The way things click when a pattern you should have seen earlier arrives all at once. "Marcus's gala is at Whitfield," I said. "Yes." She said it the way you say something you've been hoping won't be noticed yet. October 14th is the weekend of the gala. We thought it would be wonderful to have the whole family there. Combine the celebrations, your wedding guests would be right there for the Bright Page dinner, and Marcus could. She stopped herself. But not soon enough. I kept my voice even. "Mom, Marcus's charity gala is the same weekend." "Well, it's the same venue but different events," she said. "Different rooms. The gala is Saturday evening, your reception would be Saturday afternoon. And the deposit," I said. "Whose name is on the contract?" "Yours." She said it carefully. "We put it in your name since it's your wedding. The deposit is $11,000. We put down $2,000 to hold the date, and the rest is due in 30 days. How did you pay the $2,000? A pause that told me everything. "We used your card, the one you gave me for the florist payment last spring. We knew you'd want to handle it, and we didn't want to bother you before the surprise was ready." I stood in my kitchen with the phone against my ear, and I looked at the wall for a moment. "Send me the contract, Mom." "Sarah, you're being. Send me the contract, please." She sent it in 11 minutes. I read it in 4. Here is what 9 years of coordinating weddings teaches you about venue contracts. Every standard agreement has a section on authorized signatories. The person who signs a venue contract must be the named host party or a legally authorized representative. My name was on the contract as the host. My mother had signed as my representative. There was no documentation of that authorization. No power of attorney. No written consent. Just a signature line that read Patricia Holloway on behalf of Sarah Holloway, with nothing behind the on behalf of except my mother's confidence that she was allowed. Paragraph 7 of the Whitfield Estate Standard Agreement reads as follows. "In the event of a dispute regarding the authorization of the signing party, the estate reserves the right to review documentation of representation. Deposits paid under contracts found to lack proper authorization may be subject to review and return at the estate's discretion." May be subject to review and return. I read that sentence 4 times. Then I opened my laptop, and pulled up every public review and contact listing for Whitfield Estate until I found the name of their events director. A woman named Carolyn Marsh, who had been managing the property for 11 years and who, based on the 3 testimonials I found from coordinators in my network, was known as someone who handled contract disputes with professionalism and practicality. I wrote her name on a notepad. I set the contract beside it. Then I called my own attorney. Not a wedding attorney. My business attorney, Patricia Chen, who had drafted my coordinator contracts for 7 years, and who picked up on the second ring because that is the kind of attorney she is. I walked her through the situation in 8 minutes. She asked to see the contract. I sent it. She called me back in 20. She said the authorization question is real. Your mother signed on your behalf without documented authority. The estate may or may not push back on that depending on how they want to handle it. But you have grounds to challenge the contract's validity and request the deposit review under paragraph 7. I'd recommend reaching out to the events director directly and professionally before this gets further. How far does the deposit go? I asked. $2,000 paid. $9,000 due in 30 days. If the booking stands. I thanked her. I hung up. Then I sat at my kitchen table and thought about the shape of what my family had built. My mother had found a way to solve 2 problems with 1 phone call. Sarah needed a wedding venue. Marcus needed his gala to generate more donor engagement. Whitfield Estate on October 14th solved both. 200 wedding guests who didn't know each other well gathered on the same grounds as a charity gala, with the evening dinner following the afternoon reception. And Marcus at a podium explaining the Bright Page Foundation to a room full of people who had come dressed and generous for a wedding and would stay for a fundraiser. The deposit was in my name. The contract was mine to pay. The venue was chosen to serve someone else's event. And nobody had asked me. My colleague Jenna texted me that night. We had worked together for 6 years, and she had the particular gift of sensing when something was wrong before I'd said anything. You okay? She wrote. You've been quiet. I told her the short version. She responded with 5 words. That is not a gift. She was right. It wasn't. It was a decision made in my name, for someone else's benefit, presented as generosity, so I would feel obligated to accept it and ungrateful if I didn't. Daniel was quiet when I told him. He sat at the kitchen table with the contract in front of him and read it twice, and then looked up with the expression of a man who is choosing his words carefully because he knows the situation requires precision, not heat. We have a venue, he said finally. We have a venue, I said. That's all he needed to say. We sat for a while. Then he asked what I was going to do. I told him I was going to handle it the way I handled every contract problem in my professional life. Directly, professionally, and before the 30 days were up. In the 5 days between my mother's call and the family dinner she had scheduled to officially present the surprise, I did 3 things. The first was confirming our booking at Larkspur Hill. I called their coordinator, a woman named Beth I'd worked with twice professionally, and told her we were ready to commit. We signed our contract and paid our deposit that same week. The date was locked. The vineyard was ours. The second was a conversation with Carolyn Marsh at Whitfield Estate. I called her on a Wednesday morning, introduced myself professionally, mentioned 3 mutual contacts in the coordination community, and explained the situation clearly and without drama. I told her my name was on a contract I had not signed, that my mother had signed as my representative without my knowledge or written authorization, and that I was requesting a review of the deposit under paragraph 7. Carolyn was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "This is not the first time something like this has happened with family bookings." She said she would review the signing documentation and come back to me by end of the week. She called back Ton on Thursday afternoon. She confirmed that the signing documentation did not include any formal authorization from me as the named host party. She said the estate would release the booking and return the $2,000 deposit to the card it was charged to within 5 to 7 business days. I thanked her. I asked her to send the release confirmation in writing. She did. The third thing I did was nothing. I did not call my mother. I did not text Marcus. I did not tell Daniel's parents, who had already received the save the dates for Larkspur Hill on October 7th and who had already booked flights. I let the family dinner arrive the way you let something arrive when you already know what's going to happen, and you're simply waiting for the room to catch up. If you've ever sat across from people who thought they had you cornered and had to wait for the right moment to show them otherwise, leave a comment. Tell me what that waiting felt like, and if you haven't subscribed to the Family Ledger yet, do it now. Because what happens at this dinner, I planned in the time it takes to read a contract clause. The family dinner was at my parents' house on a Saturday. My mother had made lasagna, which she always made when she wanted the evening to feel warm and settled before a conversation she expected to be difficult. I had noticed this pattern at 19 and never mentioned it. The lasagna was always excellent. Daniel came with me. He sat beside me at the table and ate and spoke when spoken to and kept one hand near mine the way he does when he knows I'm handling something and wants me to know he's there. Marcus arrived with his girlfriend Bree, who smiled at everything and seemed entirely unaware of any subtext in the room, which I suspected was a cultivated skill. Bree was good at being present without being involved. We ate. My mother talked about the church auxiliary fundraiser. My father talked about the neighbor's new fence. Marcus talked about a donor meeting that had gone well. Everyone was performing the version of the evening that came before the announcement. The announcement came after the salad plates were cleared. My mother set her hands on the table in the particular way she set her hands when she was about to say something she'd been rehearsing. Patricia and Jean are so excited, she said, referring to herself in the third person, which she only did when she wanted the moment to feel larger than the room. We have something wonderful to share with Sarah and Daniel. She looked at me with the full warmth of someone who genuinely believed she had done something generous. And I understood in that moment that my mother was not a villain. She was a woman who had confused her own preferences for my needs for so long that she could no longer tell the difference between them. She described Whitfield Estate. The grand hall, the millwork, the terrace, October 14th. She described it the way you describe something you've already decided, not something you're proposing. She described it with the settled confidence of someone who has put down $2,000 and considers the matter closed. Marcus nodded along. He added that the venue was beautiful, that he thought it would be perfect for us, and that the estate was really quite remarkable in October. He said this with the ease of someone talking about a place he knew well, which he did, because his charity event had been there for 3 years running. Bree said it sounded gorgeous. My father said your mother worked really hard on this. Daniel was very still beside me. My mother finished with the words I had been waiting for. The deposit is handled, she said. The contract is in your name, so everything is in order. We just need you to confirm with Whitfield for the remaining balance before the 30-day mark. The remaining $9,000. In my name. For a date I hadn't chosen at a venue serving my brother's fundraising calendar. She looked at me with love and expectation and the complete confidence of someone who has never had to read paragraph 7. I folded my hands on the table. Mom, I said. Daniel and I have a venue. She blinked. Whitfield is your venue, sweetheart. Larkspur Hill. I said it clearly. We booked it 6 months ago. We've sent save the dates. October 7th. Her expression shifted. The warmth stayed, but something behind it recalculated. Larkspur Hill is too small. It's the right size for the wedding we're having, I said. 60 people. The people we actually want are here. Marcus looked at his plate. Sarah. My mother's voice changed register slightly. The deposit is already paid. I nodded. $2,000 for the card you used without asking me. I know. We did it for you. You did it without asking me. I kept my voice level. There is a difference. My father shifted in his chair. Mom leaned forward. The contract is in your name. You're responsible for the remaining balance. I looked at her. Then I looked at Marcus. He was still looking at his plate, but the angle of his shoulders told me he was tracking every word. I said I spoke to Carolyn Marsh at Whitfield Estate on Wednesday. I raised a concern about the signing authorization under paragraph 7 of their standard agreement. She reviewed the documentation and confirmed that the contract lacked proper authorization from me as the named host. The booking has been released. The $2,000 is being returned to your card within 7 business days. The table went quiet. Not the comfortable quiet. The kind that arrives when a room full of people realizes simultaneously that the ground shifted sometime in the last 3 days and nobody told them. My mother's mouth opened, closed, opened again. You canceled our booking. I didn't cancel it. I raised a legitimate authorization question. And the estate decided on its own contract terms. Marcus looked up for the first time. Sarah. His voice was careful. Measured. That gala matters to a lot of kids. I know it does, I said. And it's still happening. At Whitfield. On October 14th. Without my wedding attached to it. We thought, he started. I know what you thought, Marcus. I looked at him steadily. You thought 200 wedding guests would spend the afternoon at my reception and stay for your gala dinner. You thought my guest list would become your donor pool for the evening. I understand the logic. But my wedding is not a fundraising vehicle. He sat back. Bree looked at the lasagna. My father said you're putting a lot of work into this. Dad. I said gently. She put work into something she made a decision about without asking me. That's not the same thing. My mother had tears now. Not the performative kind. The genuine kind, which was harder. She had meant it as love. The shape of what she'd done was wrong, but what was underneath it was real. I knew that it did not make any of this simple. I said, Mom, I appreciate that you wanted to give us something. I do. But Daniel and I planned our wedding. We chose our venue. We chose our guests. We chose our date. A wedding is not a surprise. It belongs to the people getting married. Her voice was very quiet. We just wanted to be involved. You can be involved. I kept my voice as gentle as I could make it. You can come to Larkspur Hill on October 7th and watch us get married in a place we love with the people who matter to us. That's the involvement I want from you. The room held a kind of silence that has texture to it. heavy and real. Marcus spoke again after a few minutes. He spoke quietly, which was unusual for him. He said that the gala was already over budget this year, that he'd been counting on the additional donor exposure the shared weekend would provide. He said it not as a demand, but in the depleted voice of someone who has been carrying something heavier than they've admitted. I sat with that. I heard it. I said, I'm sorry the foundation is struggling. I mean that. If you want to talk about fundraising strategy, I'll sit down with you and go through it. I know event production. I can help you think through it differently. He looked at Amy. Really? Yes. That offer is real. But it has to be separate from my wedding. He nodded. Once. Small. The nod of someone who has just understood that something they thought was a given was never a given, and that the person across from them has been clearer about this than he gave them credit for. My mother excused herself to the kitchen. My father followed. Daniel and I sat at the table with Marcus and Bree in the particular quiet that follows an evening that has said everything it needed to say. Marcus looked at his hands. She's been really stressed about the gala numbers, he said. I think she thought this would solve two things at once. I know, I said. I didn't know you'd already booked somewhere. You didn't ask. He looked up. Fair. That was the most honest exchange, Mark, you and I had had in years. It didn't fix anything. But it was real, and it fit the shape of the thing. The deposit came back to my mother's card in 6 days. She called to tell me, and the call was short and careful in the way calls are when two people are still finding the shape of what comes next. She said she was sorry for using the card without asking. She said it simply without qualifiers. I accepted it the same way. She asked if she could be involved in something, anything, for the wedding. I said yes. I told her she could handle the welcome table on the day, guest list, seating cards, and the Sandmall gifts Daniel and I had chosen. She said she would do it perfectly. I said, I know you will, Mom. And she did. She arrived at Larkspur Hill on October 7th at 10 in the morning with everything organized in labeled boxes and a cream blouse that made her look like she'd been born to stand beside a mountain vineyard at autumn light. She greeted every guest by name. She made Daniel's grandmother laugh twice before the ceremony started. She cried during the vows and didn't try to hide it. After the reception, when the caterers were clearing and the string lights were still glowing above the terrace, she found me near the terrace railing. She stood beside me and looked out at the mountain going dark in the last of the light. It's beautiful, she said. It really is, I said. She put her hand over mine on the railing, not the orchestrating hand, just her hand. We stood there for a while without talking. Marcus's gala ran the following weekend at Whitfield Estate. He texted me the Monday after. Said it had gone well. Said the take was $61,000, the highest they'd had. Said one of the donors had offered to connect him with a corporate sponsor for next year. I texted back that I was glad. I meant it. I called him a few weeks later about the offer I'd made at the dinner table. We spent an hour on the phone going through his event budget and donor acquisition strategy. I gave him 3 structural suggestions that came directly from what I do every day. He took notes. He said he hadn't thought about the event architecture that way before. I said, that's what I do. You should have asked me years ago. He laughed. The real laugh, not the polished one, maybe he said. The last thing I want to tell you is this. My wedding was exactly what Daniel and I planned. 60 people. The people we actually wanted in the room. The barrel ceiling of the Larkspur Hill tasting room during the ceremony, the terrace at dusk for the reception, and the mountain turning every shade of October as the evening came in. The officiant said the words. Daniel's eyes were bright. My mother stood at the welcome table in her cream blouse and greeted everyone like she'd been part of planning every detail. She had been. The right detail. The one that fits. I've been asked since, by people who've heard parts of the story, whether I feel bad about what happened at the family dinner. About the deposit, the booking, my mom, and her tears. Here's my honest answer. I feel sad that it happened the way it did. I feel sad that my mother's instinct, which was genuinely to give me something, arrived wrapped in a decision she made for me without me. I feel sad that the shape of love in my family for so long has been someone deciding what's best for someone else and presenting it as a gift and expecting gratitude as the only appropriate response. I don't feel bad about paragraph 7. I don't feel bad about the call to Carol and Marcia. Hush. I don't feel bad about sitting at that dinner table and naming what had happened without drama and without apology. Here's what I know after 9 years of building other people's perfect days. A wedding is not a venue. It is not a deposit. It is not a date on a contract. It is a decision made between 2 people about how they want to begin the rest of their lives together. Nobody else gets to make that decision in your name. No matter how much they love you, no matter how warm the lasagna is, no matter how many good reasons they have that belong entirely to someone else's calendar. My name was on that contract, but the wedding was mine, and I knew exactly how to get them back in the right order. If this story made you feel something, share it with someone who needs to hear that loving someone does not authorize them to sign on your behalf. Drop a comment. Tell me if you've ever had a gift arrive that cost you more than it gave you. I read everyone's writing in the family ledger. I'll see you in the next one.